We start the third part of this lecture by returning on an example that we have reused many times in this course, the sale institution. The sale process is a fundamental economic transaction. Its institutionalization remounts to the dawn of the civilization. We can find rules about the sale already in Hammurabi's Code of Laws, around 4,000 years ago. So what is a sale? The offerer makes an offer which, once accepted by the offeree, creates a binding legal contract. Once the acceptance is declared, the buyer has the obligation to pay and the seller to deliver. Now, because institutions enable individuals to perform an action in order to obtain a certain result, they can be seen as abilities provided by the social environment. A seller can sell and a buyer can buy because there is the sale institution, otherwise they could not perform a transfer of property. If we look at an institutional process as the sale in atomic terms, we can identify which are the associated institutional roles, generally centered around actions. The role of the buyer is defined by the action buying. These institutional roles can be seen as minimal agent, whose intent is immediate. I buy because I want to buy. The intent behind this intent, that is why a buyer wants to buy, is not known and generally irrelevant at the institutional level. This means that the institutional role can be considered as a basic component used by another intentional entity. We call this second entity agent role. This is the abstraction we will consider as components of social systems, not individuals nor communications, but agent roles. That is, behavioral patterns intentionally characterized, institutionally relevant. The agent role is in practice a coordinator of institutional roles, and such a coordination is purposive. Let us consider a relevant example, a swap scheme, a typical fraud scheme applied, for instance, for tax evasion. Suppose C1 and C2 own real estates worth 10 millions, and both of them want the real estate of the other. They could buy and sell their respective real estates, each paying the property transfer tax of 6%. As the two properties have the same value, and they are going in any case to swap them, why don't they declare in the sale agreement that the value of the real estate is inferior, so that both can decrease the amount of taxes? Superficially, the transaction is correct. However, the sale has not occurred at arm's length, and the prices are out of the market, and for this reason the transaction is illicit. This scheme can be generalized. We talk about agent role, but we do not define who is actually playing the role of coordinator. It could be a physical person, a group, or an organization. It is something that enables a deeper intentional connection between the buyers and the sellers. Second, several actors are generally involved in the performance of a transaction. Besides the buyer, the seller, the competing buyers, and the competing sellers, we have also appraisers, notary lawyers, and the tax administration may in principle triangulate evidence from those sources. Two dimensions describe the sensing abilities of the decision maker. On the one hand, we have the range of visibility. The agent has only unlimited sensing of reality depending on the evidence that can be acquired by its perceptual apparatus. However, some evidence may be provided at request by external sources, and consequently the range of visibility can be widened. Problems with this dimension is that relevant information may be still missing, and trustworthiness or reliability of sources can be sometimes not certain. The second dimension is the focus of vision. Vision, as any other action, costs, in terms of time and resources. Where to pay attention is indeed an economic decision. In principle, setting the focus where there is more chance to find non-compliance would be an optimizing behavior, but this determines risk of self-fulfilling prophecies. If there is a road in which cars tend to go fast and we start placing more and more cameras on that area, we will most probably see even more people going at a higher speed. Issues on the focus dimension are that blind spots could exist also within the visibility range, because the attention is not directed towards them. Second, we need to be aware that investigations produce side effects. If people see that they are being investigated, they will behave differently, and this might undermine our investigation. Now, let us consider a simple example of institutional design. Let us imagine that we have opened a website for sales. Suppose that we are at the very beginning of e-commerce and we don't have any of the practices we have today. As initial settings there is no physical identification of agents, identity is related just to account, which means that creating a new account corresponds to create a new identity. people start buying and selling, and very soon some non-compliance scenarios starts appearing. For instance, buyers do not pay but still take the delivery. A solution here would be to establish the order of payment and delivery. In this case, however, sellers may still just take the money without delivering. Possible solutions in this case would be to introduce a third party, although this is rather expensive in general, or to introduce reputation mechanisms. Looking at the sale transaction using Commons diagram, a reputation mechanism is a coalition informational transmission formed on one of the vertical axes. In this case, the reputation concerns the seller, therefore the axis is that of the buyers that share information about the trustworthiness of the seller. The most natural informational transmission occurs already within a single individual. This happens when this agent is buying into different moments in time, thus playing twice the buyer-agent role. Introducing reputation entails additional phenomena. For instance, new sellers will always have no reputation. If they want to enter in the market, they typically need to place a better price than their competitors. This in turn entails that sellers that have no intention to deliver will place their price at the bottom end of the market. On the one hand, the lower price will make them plausible new sellers. On the other hand, the lowest price will attract in principle more buyers. Even if most buyers will consider suspect this outlier offer, in percentage there is always some buyer that will fall into the trap. The costs on the seller side are minimal, and one buyer that pays may pay off for thousands of offers. This is essentially the mechanism of scam advertisements for apartment rentals, but those people can be recognized as well by specific signals. For instance, they publish the same message in different cities, the price is very, very low compared to the market, and also they want to be paid before visiting the apartment. To conclude the example, frequent occurrences of non-compliance undermines the existence of an institutional system. Maintenance occurs when new rules that improve predictability are introduced. These rules are not required to be designed top-down, that is, provided by an exogenous activity of enforcement. These rules may emerge as patterns of signals relevant to classify the actual agent roles that agents are playing. The knowledge we have used for these examples are prototypical cases both in terms of compliance and non-compliance. Those constitute the deep model of the social system. We utilized also some knowledge about interpretative diagnostic procedures that are typically applied in that domain context. Those in principle could also be automatized by training some classifier. Finally, we utilize some knowledge about remedy and repair solutions that need to be applied when a problem is identified. Where to find all this knowledge? In the case of an organization, part of this expert knowledge usually comes in some narrative form concerning use cases, prototypical scenarios, failure stories, and etc. etc. Court proceedings are also interesting as they report explicitly the whole diagnostic process, the case, and the associated solution. We can read in them a case reconstruction, the matter of fact, consisting of evidence, witnesses, expert testimony, and the associated legal interpretation, the matter of law, concerning the decision, concurrent, and dissenting opinions. Those are today computationally underutilized resources. We can return to our foundational ontology. Agent roles act as mechanisms that explain why an agent is behaving in a certain way. They are self-other representations that we apply indifferently to guide our own behavior or to interpret someone else's behavior. Agents play agent roles, producing intra-agent or inter-agent events, that is, communications. Only part of these events are observed. The interpretive cycle is then inversed. The difference of what we see from what we expect to see is what allows us to tag certain transactions as suspicious. Only if we are able to connect the suspicious transaction to known schemes, we can conclude that the transaction is indeed illicit, and then we can possibly start the consequent remedy and repair actions. Note that what I should see, roles others may play, and roles to play to respond are learned from experts, norms, and experience.